When we hear about cholesterol, we normally think about plaque buildup in your arteries and then heart problems. But it turns out cholesterol actually has effects on multiple sclerosis as well. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of You and Me and Multiple Sclerosis. My name is Pam. I've been living with multiple sclerosis for 40 years. I always thought of cholesterol as a heart issue, and in fact, I've read an awful lot of articles lately that say it's not as simplistic as we've always been taught. There's not only a difference between high density and low density, but there's a difference between the low density that's kind of like puffy, fluffy stuff and the low density that's more like unpopped popcorn, if you will, so that one goes through more easily than the other. So in other words, more complicated than you think. But it turns out that not only is cholesterol a biomarker for multiple sclerosis activity, but that even though an article just came out about it because a new paper just got published, this idea is far from new. But let's take a look. This article appeared in Multiple Sclerosis News Today on October 25th of 2024. I've had it in my folder for quite a while and I'm finally getting a chance to look into it a little more. It's called Cholesterol Medications Might Be Able to Be Repurposed for MS. Study. Brain stem cells boost cholesterol production in MS, driving neurotoxic damage. The hypothesis here is that cholesterol is actually produced, well, we already knew it was produced in the body, but they're saying that it drives the neurotoxic damage. So in other words, the damage to our nerves comes from boosted cholesterol production. Maybe because we have MS, I'm not sure of that, but the brain stem cells seem to be the culprits here. Let's check this out a little bit further. The article says that increased production of cholesterol by stem cells in the brain contributes to neurological damage in multiple sclerosis, according to a new study conducted in lab-grown cells. Findings suggest cholesterol-lowering medications can reverse this damage, implying such treatments might be able to be repurposed for MS. Well, that's always nice when we start focusing a little bit on reversing the damage that MS has caused for us. So I'm interested to know more about that. Cholesterol metabolism has been extensively investigated in the context of non-communicable diseases such as cardiovascular disease, and more recently in cancer. Angelo D'Alessandro, PhD, a professor at the University of Colorado School of Medicine and co-author of this study, said in a university news story, and we have seen other publications from the University of Colorado School of Medicine. They seem to be quite a prestigious center for multiple sclerosis research. He goes on to say that common drugs that target cholesterol metabolism have been proven to be safe and effective in humans. Our findings suggest that these drugs could be repurposed in the treatment of MS. The study, Increased Cholesterol Synthesis Drives Neurotoxicity in Patient Stem Cell-Derived Model of Multiple Sclerosis, was published in Cell Stem Cell. In MS, inflammation in the brain causes damage to nerve cells, and this neurological damage ultimately drives disease symptoms. The article says that in theory, activating neural stem cells could help repair damage that drives MS. The brain houses stem cells called neural stem/progenitor cells, or NSCs, that are able to grow into new healthy nerve cells. In theory, activation of these cells could help repair the damage that drives MS. However, NSCs in MS tend to be in a state of senescence, so it's like old age, so they're older cells, which basically means that the cells are inactive, so their ability to repair damage is blunted. The reason for NSC senescence in MS are poorly understood. but finding ways to turn off senescence and activate these stem cells might be a viable strategy for developing new MS treatments. In the study, a team of scientists set out to better understand the mechanisms that drive senescence in MS NSCs. For their experiments, the researchers engineered skin cells from people with progressive forms of MS into NSCs, and other NSCs were derived from people without MS to be used as controls. As expected, the MS NSCs showed increases in markers of cellular senescence. Through a battery of experiments, the researchers determined the senescent MS NSCs were in a hypermetabolic state, meaning they were burning more sugar than is typical. In addition to using the sugar for energy, the cells were using byproducts from the sugar to produce high levels of cholesterol and other fatty molecules. Additional experiments revealed the excessive cholesterol was activating senescence, promoting proteins in the NSCs. In addition to driving senescence in the cells themselves, this also led to a characteristically senescent collection of molecules the cells were secreting to communicate with other cells, known as the secretome. The senescent secretome could cause damage to neighboring nerve cells, results showed. And they say that cholesterol-associated secretomes contribute to neurotoxic damage in MS. Our study identifies cholesterol-associated secretomes as key contributors to neurotoxic damage in progressive MS, said Stefano Pluchino, MD, PhD, study co-author at the University of Cambridge. Based on these findings, the researchers predicted that treatment with a cholesterol-lowering medication might act to reduce senescence in MS-NSCs and improve the health of nearby nerve cells. Indeed, treatment with simvastatin, a type of cholesterol-lowering drug called a statin, was shown to have nerve-protecting properties in the cell models. Our findings suggest a disease-associated cholesterol-related hypermetabolic status of MSCs derived from MS patients that leads to neurotoxic signaling and is rescuable pharmacologically, the scientists concluded. Rescuable pharmacologically, though that's an interesting turn of phrase, I guess all it means is you can take drugs to fix it. Pluchino said these findings offer opportunities for precise interventions in previously overlooked brain cell subsets, including neurostem/progenitor cells. Why don't we go back and take a look at this actual paper and see? I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I think there's some interesting things here. And here's the actual paper, as they said in the article that we just looked at. This is a highly technical paper. I really don't know that we would gain much from reading through it. But what I would like to do is, you see the list of authors down here. It shows the affiliations of the authors. And so I want to click on the Show More and look at that, a huge list of authors. And if I click on the affiliations, I just wanted to show you where the different authors of this paper come from. One of the things that I think makes this paper outstanding is the range in the geological spread of the people that are working on it. So the first author is from the University of Cambridge, as you can see here. The second author is from the University of Colorado School of Medicine. The third is also from Cambridge. The fourth author is from Leopold Franzens University in Innsbruck, Austria. The fifth author is from the Imperial College of London. The sixth author is from the New York Stem Cell Foundation Research Institute in New York, New York. The seventh author is from the Istituto Italiano di Tecnologia in Milan, Italy. The eighth author is from the University of Cologne in Germany, and the ninth author is also from the University of Cologne. And so you're getting this idea that these folks are coming together because they each have a unique expertise that can be pulled together for this particular project. The research, to me, is enriched by a multi-institute team. The other thing that's always good to look at is the sponsors of a particular piece of research, because depending on who sponsors it, we can have more or less confidence in the nature of the results, how biased they might be, or what the ulterior motive might be for doing the research in the first place. So this particular research was supported by the Fairbank Foundation Catalyst Award from the UK MS Society, National MS Society Research Grant, and the Bascule Charitable Trust, Wings for Life, and the Fondazione Italiano Sclerosi Multipla. I think we can figure out what that is, even if we don't speak Italian. As it goes on and on, it looks like we're looking at some basic research. They mention ECTRIMS because this is a recipient of an ECTRIMS postdoctoral research fellowship exchange program fellowship and is supported through a UK MS Society Centre Excellence grant. Here we go. Jointly funded by AstraZeneca and Wellcome Trust and the UKRI Medical Research Council. So AstraZeneca's in here, although it may not be a major sponsor because it's certainly not front and center in this. But you can see as it goes on and on, there's more sponsors to this thing, probably reflective of the fact that there are so many different authors from so many different institutions involved. This is all good stuff to know because this helps us to evaluate the nature of the results, as I said. Having read that article and looked at the paper from which it came, I just want to give you an idea of the longevity of this idea in the field. It's gone back, maybe not decades, but it's gone back a few years. So I want to show you a search page that I did looking at cholesterol and multiple sclerosis. So when I did a search for multiple sclerosis plus cholesterol, I found quite a few articles, some of which were press releases on the one that we just looked at. But there were other things in here too that reflect the age of this concept, that there was a correlation between cholesterol and multiple sclerosis. And as you can see, this very first one out of PubMed, it came out in 2016. But it talks about cholesterol and markers of cholesterol turnover in multiple sclerosis. It says down here that cholesterol is an essential component of mammalian cellular and myelin. So in 2016, they were already looking at this connection. This is a press release on the study we just looked at. This one's kind of interesting. It talks about cholesterol being a necessary evil from a multiple sclerosis perspective, that it's necessary, but it can be disruptive as well. And again, this was published in 2016. And this one is more in line maybe with the one we were just looking at, the vascular dysfunction and dyslipidemia in multiple sclerosis as it relates to cholesterol. And high cholesterol is linked to MS cognitive impairment in MS News Today. That came out in 2024 also. And another one from Multiple Sclerosis News Today. This is the one we just looked at. Oh, and then this one is interesting. Aggressive MS disease progression linked to, I'm going to pull this up. Low cholesterol may reflect more aggressive disease progression. Now, this seems to be the opposite of what we were just looking at. Plasma and cerebral spinal fluid levels lower in MS patients than those without the disease. Now, that is kind of interesting. That came out in 2022. So have they changed their minds, or are they looking at this from a different perspective, or is it more nuanced? And I kind of think that with MS and with most things, there's a lot of nuance in these things. So you can't just take out a hammer and whack a problem. When it comes to MS, you really do need some finer tools than that. And as you can see, there are other articles from other sources that talk about the role of cholesterol in multiple sclerosis. It's been a topic for quite some time. I took a quick look out on clinicaltrials.gov just to see if there was any studies that related to this research. And I did not find anything. I think maybe because it's really not ready for clinical trialing yet. All of the trials that came back in the search results really had more to do with either exercise or diet as it relates to overcoming a sedentary lifestyle or reducing the cholesterol-laden food in your diet, that kind of thing. There was an interesting one, though. We mentioned in the article this simvastatin. And so there, I found this study, simvastatin in secondary progressive MS, which looks like it's fairly new. It says it was last updated in January of 2024. But as you can see, it's University College London, and quite likely the same investigator that's also working on the paper. Yeah, they don't list the person, as far as I can tell, but it is the same institution. So I'm figuring that the person who was a co-author on the paper we looked at is involved in some way in this particular study. But as you can see, the studies don't seem to focus as much on cholesterol itself as they do on lifestyle interventions that would improve your diet or get you out of your chair, be less sedentary, that kind of thing. There's one here on regulation of lipid metabolism in autoimmune disease, and so that one could be pretty close. But as you can see, most of the rest of these are, number 3 is about diet, and number 4 is about exercise. Number 5 is about exercise. Number 6 is about exercise. Number 7 is about exercise. And then there's the transcranial magnetic stimulation. We have looked at that in other videos. And this optical coherence tomography, I just participated in a similar study at OHSU. Vitamin A, and pharmacokinetics of DMF on exploratory biomarkers. That one might be close, but it doesn't specifically mention cholesterol front and center. Number 13 is again on exercise. And number 14 is on exercise. And then number 15 is the one we just looked at, the simvastatin. And number 16 is on gut microbiota. Again, not specifically cholesterol. And now here's a pharmaceutical, number 17. I think it's some kind of a pharmaceutical on cognitive performance. And then here's one on the neural sleep on mobility. So not specific to cholesterol as such. But as you can see, there's an awful lot in this general area, and I will post this so you can go out and check into any of these that might be of interest to you. This is a good general principle for how research happens. Lots of research teams in lots of different places over a long period of time, nibbling at the issue from various points of view, various hypotheses, sooner or later might coalesce around something that could actually end up being a therapy that's used in treating people. But it takes time. And so when we read articles about, oh, look at this eureka moment that we had, or look at this new therapy and how promising it is, you need to realize that it didn't just come out of nowhere, but it was built slowly, brick by brick almost, over the years. And so that's one reason why we're not, even with all the advances that we're seeing and all the attention that's being put on multiple sclerosis research, we're not going to see major breakthroughs just happen out of nowhere. I've often joked about the mice, and I'm only partly joking about the mice, and the sacrifices that they have made to get us where we are today, because think about all those preliminary experiments that never seem to pan out. How many papers you look at from the past that seem so promising, but nothing ever comes of them. But the other thing is that even when it gets into clinical trials, there are people who volunteer for phase 1. Those are healthy people taking a big risk, really, because they're trying out new therapies. And then that whole process has to play out, and that takes time. And I don't know that I'm really trying to be a downer here, but I'm just trying to be a little realistic that whatever the novel approach or the new idea is, it's not something that's going to be rushed to the marketplace anytime soon. And I'm kind of glad for that, because I don't want to be the guinea pig for some new medication that hasn't been thoroughly vetted, thoroughly tested, followed up with all the people who were on it, so that we can find out whether they ended up having long-term side effects from a medicine that at least at first seemed like it was fine. As I said, don't be discouraged about it, but do bear in mind that it's just going to have to take a little bit of time, and be thankful to the mice and the people who have volunteered or been volunteered to try things out for us and generate the data that the scientists and the medical community will use to determine whether something is actually going to be in the mainstream and available from our doctors and pharmacists. But that's all I have for you today. So until I see you again in my next video, please do take really good care of yourself and have a wonderful 2025.